We believe it's the 20% of effort that gets you 80% of results.
It's one of the most powerful things I think that's come out in a long time, and yet it's still so heavily molded.
If you do have any like criticisms or critiques or where you think that breaks down, I'm very curious to hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it now.
I think one area that I ran into, and I know this is something near and dear to your hearts, but
welcome back, everyone, to That Amazon Ads Podcast, where today we are joined by Dustin Wassner of BTR Media, who is the head of product development, head of advertising technology, doing a lot with Amazon Marketing Stream, Amazon Marketing Cloud. You guys should all know who BTR Media is. We had Destiny with Sean on the podcast a few months ago. Top celebrity in the space. Everyone knows this brand by now. So it's awesome to have the head of technology. And you guys have built your own in-house technology, as far as I'm aware, right? You don't use other people for bid optimizations. Everything's in-house.
Everything's in-house. It's the magnum opus of my entire life, so proud of it.
This is awesome, man. So I'm excited to be diving in and really just hearing how you kind of like, if you could build your own tool, how would you build it? And it's not even an if, it's exactly the scenario. But I know there's a lot of other brands, agencies who are listening to this, and a lot of them have considered building their own in-house tech. So we're just going to be firing through it, mostly talking on bid optimizations, because Andrew, I'm not sure if have you seen the most updates from the poll? We posted that poll on our YouTube channel.
I haven't seen the latest. What do we got?
So we were asking what topics we wanted covered off on more. And bidding tactics is continues to win with 30% of the votes. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
Perfect. Love it.
Dustin, anything else you want to add to your kind of background or context just to get people acquainted with you?
Yeah, I can give a 30,000 foot. So I started off wanting to do the digital nomad, be your own boss, maybe 2016. Gravitated towards making my own products, launched a couple Amazon brands. One of those is still in existence today. And in the process of doing that, we were manufacturing a lot. So I taught myself how to write simple VBA scripts and manage a lot of our inventory, inbound shipments, PPC, doing that. And eventually I just got to the point where I wanted something that was like bigger, could be done on more than just one machine. So taught myself Python, AWS, SQL, and now I would consider fairly skilled full stack dev that builds out all of our tech.
Awesome.
Great background. I mean, obviously you've done a lot on the tech side of things. So excited to hear a lot of that background and some of the things you're learning from that. What would you say is like the thing that most people are getting wrong when it comes to the bidding strategies that they're using and how they're optimizing their bids on Amazon from your experience?
Things that they're getting wrong. I mean, I feel like asking you guys that. You guys are the ones who are known as the bid experts in the space. I mean, the frequency that they're doing it, maybe the formulas that they're doing it. I think sometimes it can be, for an easier brand, maybe a little bit simpler than people approach it. It doesn't necessarily always need to be overly complicated. Prior to Marketing Stream, trying to employ day parting, I think, was difficult just because of attributing, clicks to sales and trying to shut off the right time periods. So I saw people doing that occasionally that I was just a little bit leery of, but yeah,
okay.
I mean,
I'm already sensing like 20 different topics that we can go super deep on right now. Let's first back up. Andrew and I, you're right. We have talked a lot about this stuff, and hopefully we are becoming the experts on bidding, because that's something we're passionate about. We believe it's the 20% of effort that gets you 80% of results. Because if you have like more relevant keywords or less relevant keywords or non-relevant keywords, a lot of times bidding can solve that for you, is kind of our point of view. But we've talked about formulas a lot. We've talked about frequency a lot. What's your opinion? Maybe not the formulas just yet, but frequency. What's the strategy with BTR Media? Like, how do you guys handle frequency?
I like to run it every day. I like to run it every day just because I like to act on the newest data. I don't make any kind of really drastic changes on it. Over the years, I've gone back and forth on if it is necessary to do every day or if it could even be detrimental. But I just like to play it safe, make smaller adjustments on a daily basis. the way that we pull our data, and now we try to pull it in more completely because, for instance, if you pull in the data from yesterday and try to act on it, the sales for that click may not take place for several days. So you have to, factor this in to give it some time to have sales attribution.
Yeah. When you say do it every day, are you the kind of chief operator of managing the bids, or do you mean like generally speaking that's your preference, but other people at Better Media are kind of doing their own strategy?
Now, our bid ops system is built entirely on the API, so everything is fully automated from the data pipeline, pulling everything into the actual implementation of the bids. Within the UI, you can make any kind of adjustments. That's where the AMs that we have would make those, so you can change any kind of ACOSs or terminology that we have internal to BTR that you could go in and manipulate those things, as I'm sure you guys have as well. But for the most part, it does run every night at around 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm. And then look back windows. I know you and I talked about this, so I'm going to give the audience a quick brief overview of a couple things. Dustin, we had a meeting probably like 6 months ago or longer ago, but we were talking about solving the low data problem. You've got something with one click, no sales. The question is, do you increase the bid on this because maybe it's a low visibility term, or do you decrease the bid on it because all of these, like, you get thousands of keywords with one click, no sales, and then those all add up and bleed your account. And my point of view was, when you have these low data scenarios, we kind of go through a data hierarchy where we work our way up to larger and larger like data groups, where usually it'll first you'll look at the ad group that keyword is contained in to get some ideas around benchmarks. If the ad group's not have enough data, you look at the campaign, and then the next step would be group of campaigns, and then the overall profile. And then your perspective was a little bit different, and I thought was interesting. Rather than going up in terms of trying to find that additional data, you go back. So you pick on longer and longer date ranges, looking back to collect more data, which I think is really interesting. So generally speaking, like, what are the date ranges that you're using when making these daily, nightly optimizations? Because I know we talked about also dynamic date ranges. So speak to that a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go into too much of the secret sauce, but I would tell you that in years past, I've started out with just doing a 15, 30, 60, 90. And a lot of that was just built off of BitOps, bulk ops scripts from VBA. So I would just pull bulk files of multiple date ranges. And I like to keep the data as segmented to a target as possible. That's why I like extending the date range. And the way that I've always looked at it, try to, is if I have a conversion rate, I try to attribute it to the child ASIN that's being advertised. If the child ASIN, say, has a 5% conversion rate, that's going to be 20 clicks per order.
Mm-hmm.
So if the date range that I'm looking at only provides me with 5 clicks of data, that means I'm not even looking at a date range large enough to have enough clicks to make an intelligent decision, because on average it takes 20 to get a sale. So if the data is there, I like to look back rather than aggregating across different targets that may have inherently different conversion rates.
Yeah.
There are several ways to approach it. And even that, sometimes if you get into longer tail terms or you just don't have the data, right now you can only pull 90 days in max from the API for certain ad types. With bulk files, you can only look back 60 or 90 days. So even then, if you need to go further back than that, you might get into seasonality problems. You might just run out of time windows to where you can't look far back enough. So then at that point, I think that you have to aggregate differently or just try to make the decisions with very little data, which I personally don't like doing.
Yeah, that was my primary reason because I also consider that looking back on longer date ranges. But my main concern is, like, if you're in February or whatever, February 1st, something's got lower data, you start stretching back, you start reaching into like December so, you start losing a lot of the more recency trends. And so that was my reason for deciding to like aggregate within the same time frame that I was like kind of like my master time frame that I selected.
Yeah.
But I still think there's a lot of value in having multiple date ranges. Like even right now, I think it's something that we're considering adding in Ad Labs is the ability to add up to 2 or 3 different date ranges. So you could have like a 7-day, 14 and 30 day, and we would take weighted averages across them. I'm curious, do you apply like weighted averages where you're calculating for all the time frames and then taking a weighted average, or is it only like if this date range doesn't have data, then you tap into the other date range?
I'll try to add weighted date ranges to give more preference to the more recent data. But I think the other thing that it can help with too, especially if you have the ability to look at it through AMC, then it's great to be able to look at the amount of time for that consideration period. But if you have a lower consideration period, we're solving a problem with data scarcity. But if you have data abundance, you may not need to look at the 30-day window. If the average time between click and sale is very fast, you might be able to shrink that down and ride the trends a little bit cleaner because you can actually shrink it down to just, a week or two looking back. Sales attribution aside, that's always going to be an issue and never going within the 48-hour window where you're trying to complete it. But I think you get the point. It helps, I think, in both directions.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That point on the time to conversion that you were just kind of illustrating is something we've talked about on the podcast a little bit, and just really illustrates how powerful and what kind of insights you can really gain from Amazon Marketing Cloud. And so I'm curious, having worked with Amazon Marketing Cloud quite a bit, what are some of the biggest problems that you see AMC is able to solve that, maybe not everybody's already spouting from the rooftops?
The biggest one, I think the lowest hanging fruit, is the custom audiences that you can push DSP. That one is enormous. I mean, there are some just no-brainer audiences that I think every brand can use. Abandoned carts, X amount of orders without a subscribe and save being done. Those are something I think can be applied across the board. The other ones I think that they're but I don't know if they're talked about, is doing different attribution systems or just different methodologies of attribution. So you can get into linear, but also first touch. And where I think that's good is if you have a brand that is really heavily relying on the full funnel, they're getting into a lot of multi-touch, then those DSP campaigns that are at the beginning of the funnel, they very rarely get any kind of sales attributed to them. So their performance always looks fairly poor. But if you shift the attribution to, say, first click or distributed evenly, now all of a sudden that initial path to purchase DSP campaign, it actually might be, a gateway to several paths, and it actually has very good performance. So rather than turning the CPM down, you might want to actually turn it up.
I was going to completely switch topics, Andrew, unless if you had any follow-ups there.
No. I was just looking for some of those different options. I love the abandoned cart one. That's one we've been implementing on an account that I work on right now, seeing really good results. Definitely like the number of orders without subscribe and save, not one that I had heard about yet. So some really good use cases for custom audiences. I do have a question on custom audiences before we kind of shift topics. Can I take my Shopify data, my Shopify customer data, and upload that to Amazon Marketing Cloud in any sort of way to where I can now target my Shopify customers on Amazon?
Yes, you can. And actually, that was one of the main seminars at the Dev Summit this past week. They actually displayed it where they were uploading it, parsing it in, and then running the queries on top of it. So you can actually get almost like an ACOS for ads that were run on Amazon and then a conversion that took place on Shopify.
That's amazing. That's next level.
Yeah, is that creating like a lookalike audience, or is that the same exact audience?
No, it's the exact same audience. Like when you run these queries, it actually gives you a finite, specific number of customers that you are targeting when you push it to DSP. That's the first part of the query, is an exploratory one where it says, if I push this audience, there are 20,190 people that will see it.
Wild. And I know that you can create custom audiences within DSP. There's like a super user friendly, and you can like upload audiences. Is that where this would go, or is this going through AMC, like through like code programming type stuff?
No, when you create an AMC instance, you connect it to your DSP instance or account, and then when you push that audience, I mean, it can sometimes take several days to show up. It will show pending. But if you look at those audiences, and I believe it's a column that's like source or something like that, it will actually say AMC, and you name it the audience, and you'll see it right there to be added to an order and line item.
Dang. So it's an exact match audience. That's pretty cool. And can you do lookalike audiences as well? Is that something? Yeah, you can do that. Cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that'd be pretty cool. Just a good insight for brands to be able to see like what concentration of their B2B customers or the B2C, sorry, B2C, D2C customers are shopping on Amazon as well, and just being able to see the, incremental impact of Amazon potentially. So that's really cool.
It's one of the most powerful things I think that's come out in a long time, and yet it's still so heavily moated with starting
Right.
the tech moat, needing to know SQL, needing DSP. So it reminds me of like when Sponsor Brand Video came out and like everybody needed to get in on it, except everybody could. And now it's kind of the standard. Whereas this, I think it's going to take a lot longer to get to the point of where running these queries is going to be the standard because it's so inaccessible.
Is that just due to the technical nature of the platform itself, like people not knowing how to best utilize it? And then also, like, what can we do as advertisers to kind of fast track our ability to be able to cut that learning curve and being able to utilize this type of technology?
Yeah, so that was one of the big complaints at the summit, was because just initially starting with AMC, launching an instance, it's like the ownership of that instance, if you're using, say, PackView and they own it versus the brand itself, it's like that alone is a huge roadblock where you can't even get into the program quickly. And then when you get in, you need to know SQL. So I think the combination of those two would take this really shiny object and put it behind a big wall.
Okay, so it's just access to getting the instance set up. And then what was the other one you said? Sorry.
Just the ability to run SQL queries.
SQL, yeah. Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Which is a bit unfortunate because, I mean, to Andrew and I, this is super interesting stuff. And we were working on a brand that does have its own AMC instance. However, I think for a large portion of our audience, they're quite more on the inaccessible side of things. So I'd love to switch tracks a bit and talk about the formulas that you use in your bidding algorithms and the logic.
Yeah, again, I can't get too far into the secret sauce, but I would say that I'm probably not too far off from what you guys use as far as like a revenue per click times a COS. Mm-hmm. I think, algebraically, that's going to give you 80% of the way there. If you just ran that formula down the column in the bulk file and uploaded it, you're going to have those one-offs where it's like one impression, one click, one order, and you get this, wildly high bid that it suggests to you. But aside from those kinds of things, I think that that's going to get you a really good portion of the way there, and then just adding levels of incrementality to take care of the one-off situations or incremental adjustments that you want to make instead of doing the full adjustment, maybe 10% or 20% if you're doing it every day.
Yeah, and also, if anyone, sometimes we have some people who are joining on a little bit later in the show. If you want to learn more about what Dustin was just explaining with the revenue per click model, check out the first episodes 2 through 5, as well as our episode Revenue per Click is King. But also we do not, like Dustin said, we do not recommend just copying pasting that formula all the way down the sheet. That's like the general guiding I guess the principle for how we calculate everything. But when I wrote up the actual implementation of that for the Ad Labs system, it's a 12-page Google Doc. It's just filled of if this then that, trying to account for all the possible scenarios. But yeah, always using revenue per click kind of as the guiding light. But nice. I'm glad to see that we're on a similar page there, because I'm looking for a fight, for a debate. I'm trying to get someone to disagree with me on that.
I mean, I could play devil's advocate if you want to have a debate.
Seriously, if you have any, I mean, not that that's the topic of this, but if you do have any criticisms or critiques or where you think that breaks down, I'm very curious to hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it now.
I think one area that I ran into, and I know this is something near and dear to your hearts, but doing the adjustments with placements for sponsored products specifically, because we don't have the sponsor brands data. Thankfully, we have in a marketing stream where we actually get the details on sponsor products per target, per placement, per hour. So that is helpful. So we can actually, instead of doing something along the lines of going with the lowest placement, increasing accordingly and whatnot, because I feel like there does have to be a little bit of averaging, artisticness.
Right.
You don't have the specifics. You don't know which target in the 10 or 20 that are in the ad group are contributing to that one placement. I know that you guys have it nailed down to figure that out, but I think that for the average person, it could be a little bit tricky. So I think that, I'm a little rusty on this discussion, but a few years ago, I found that it would work easier if you did setting the bid to cost per click times 1.1, doing that incremental adjustment to work around where the placements are going.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm not going to be a good devil's advocate here because I'm pretty rusty on that discussion, and I haven't even tried to implement that.
Yeah. So to make sure I'm understanding properly, you're saying that if you have a sponsored product campaign with 20 products in it, 20 keywords in it, when you were looking at the top of search performance relative to product page performance, that is an aggregate of all of the keywords in that campaign. We don't know if there was one keyword in particular that drove all the top of search sales and another one that drove all the product page wasted spend. But in AMC, you do see individual keyword by placement performance.
In marketing stream, not cloud.
Oh, my bad. Marketing stream.
Yeah.
And then, but you can't actually optimize for the individual keyword placements there, right? You're still kind of having to average, but that might give you the insights to say this keyword should be in a separate campaign because the placement performance is so different that you would, that would basically give you the analysis to determine when to pull out keywords into separate campaigns. Is that correct? You can't actually adjust for individual placements per keyword per campaign.
No, you can't adjust for actual ones, but I mean, and again, rusty, but it seems like you'd have a little bit easier of a time saying, okay, I'm going to only drop the bid on this one X% compared to this one that's doing very well on top of search to compensate for that large top of search bid increase.
Gotcha.
This one isn't really contributing to it, so I don't actually need to drop this one all that much. And you can only do that with great precision, I think. I mean, unless you guys have figured out how to do that with 20 keywords, but I know you can do it on sponsored brands, but with sponsored products, you just can't attribute exactly which ones are contributing to which at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. That is actually a great point. Yeah, I think there is the average person, I think, can download keyword placement performance reports for sponsored brands, not for sponsored products.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I have not even considered that. I think there might be still a way to make the logic that we normally do work, and just account for different individual keyword placements.
I have no doubt about that. My thought is with the highest level of precision where you're working with the most granular data. You have that data in marketing stream. I would guess that the average person, unless they're using a SaaS that has it, isn't going to be able to use that. I know that they have hourly data now in bulk files, and I honestly haven't even pulled a single one. Maybe it's in there now. If it is, then awesome. You should be able to dial those targets in up and down accordingly to what you guys do.
Yeah. So did you say hourly data is in bulk sheets?
Yeah. Actually, I was on another podcast and I was disagreeing with the lady. Like, no, it's not. She's like, no, it is.
I haven't seen it yet.
And I'm like, holy cow!
They must be rolling it out. We have been dying to get that, but you can't yet change day parting scheduling, right? I mean, you guys, do you do much day parting?
We do. Do you want to get into day parting and hourly
Let's
business?
get into day party, but first, is it available in the bulk sheets? The day parting settings for sponsored products. You know what I mean?
Oh, as far as the bid rules.
Yeah, they recently started.
I don't think you could do that through bulk. I think you have to do that manually in the UI.
Okay, got it. All right, day parting. Talk to us.
Let's go day parting.
Day parting. So, day parting is another thing that I think is one of the really shiny objects, and I think there's definitely mixed feelings on it. We day part. Let's first define what we're talking about here, day parting and hourly, because some people refer to any kind of adjustments throughout the day as day parting, whereas some would think of it as going dark during certain hours.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep.
So if we're talking hourly bid ops versus day parting, we do day parting on a few accounts where it's very clearly beneficial. Mm-hmm. But I think that there are some attribution issues that you can run into if you're not careful with it. And so we don't employ it across the board for everyone. And a lot of the targets that I've found in my analysis, you get into a really big data scarcity issue because, if you have a target that's got say 30 clicks a month.
Mhm.
Now, look at that target's clicks during the 2 a.m. window in a month. I mean, you're talking like 2. You've got like nothing
Yeah.
to act on. So you
Right.
need to aggregate on this pretty heavily to make it worth it. And that's why only a few of the targets I've found in an account actually can support enough data to do this. I think that if you get into the aggregating, you can say as a whole, the account has very terrible ROAS from midnight to 4 a.m. So it makes sense to shut these campaigns down or pause the targets or drop the bids, whatever people prefer to do. And then I think it's the same thing with hourly. I kind of prefer hourly bid ops to actually going dark because I think that there's still the ability to serve impressions rather than just going dark.
Yep.
You also completely cut out the data coming in those hourly windows
Exactly.
if you
Right.
go dark on them. So you have to turn it back on to get the data, then turn it off. And so I think hourly is a little bit better, but to each their own.
Dude, you know what I think is the worst day parting strategy that unfortunately I see is very prevalent? People will say, oh, I never get sales between like from 0 to 4 a.m. Like that's the lowest sales I ever get. So I shut off all my campaigns during that time.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, I mean, I'm trying to always make a distinction between like conversion rates and sales volume because like that could be super high converting traffic. I mean, usually it isn't, but I'm more critiquing the approach that people are taking,
Mhm.
But yeah, you don't want to just pause them entirely. Like that's the other thing is I'm more of an advocate of controlling the bids to make sure that, I mean, that's kind of the way in which we optimize keywords is you're trying to raise and lower your cost per click in order to hit a certain goal, whether that's a visibility goal or an ACoS goal. And so I think the same comes like when you start looking at different hours of the day, it should be the same thing. It shouldn't just be like, just kill your whole campaigns. But yeah, when you're setting up your day parting strategies, like what metrics are you looking at? What are the KPIs that you're looking at?
It depends on what campaigns it is because, we have strategies for awareness, which are different KPIs versus typical profitability. But if we're talking that, typically I'm looking at like CPC, ROAS, or ACoS, and I'm finding that, and also spend, because a lot of people I think have this
Right.
idea like it's going to transform the account. But what I found is that the hours that perform poorly, typically what happens is midnight gets here. Everybody's budget's reset. Everybody's then showing up to the ad
Right.
auction at midnight PST. And so that's why the CPCs are so high, driving the ROAS low. But the thing that I think gets a lot of people is that the spend during those hours is, as far as a total percentage of the daily spend, it's very low. So you're going to be
Right.
able to shift
Exactly.
spend to a later
Yeah.
part of the evening where it's better, but it's not that. I mean, we're talking like single digit amounts of the total spend per day.
Mhm.
So again, will it help? Absolutely. But will it transform the account? Probably not. And I'm skeptical that in the future, as more people employ this, it seems like it would equilibrate eventually anyways, because as people pause out midnight to 4, those CPCs are going to come down, and then they shift the spend to the evening where the CPCs will go up. Eventually, you'll see it probably flatten out. I mean, if economics proves to be right, then I would expect that to happen to an extent.
Whenever you're doing the analysis for day parting, do you find it best to look at, like, let's say an individual campaign, a group of campaigns, or the total account when you're doing that analysis? Are you trying to look at it in sort of segments and chunks of the account? Like, this product has all these campaigns. I'm going to look at the data for just those campaigns for this product, have its own day parting settings rather than looking at kind of an overall aggregated view of all your products in your account. Which one do you kind of lean towards?
If it's a smaller account, then I would probably just look at the whole thing. But for a lot of our clients, which, they're larger, so they either have multiple brands within their account or they have one brand, but it's several product lines. And so I try to look at it in the most meaningful way where the data kind of naturally, clearly segregates itself, and then try to aggregate it that way.
So you're just trying to find that if there's a big difference between X product line and this product line, you're going to be able to see that, split those two rules out separately. That type of thing.
Like as an example, we have one large like science test equipment brand that we manage, and their performance in the weekends is very poor. I would imagine because the people who are buying, school supplies for science products, they're just not doing their job because they're at home. They're not at the school. So, that's an example where that's a small segment of their account. The other parts, the weekend sales are great. Everything looks fantastic. So day parting wouldn't make sense. But if we broke it down on a campaign level, I think it would be a little bit too segregated, but that kind of naturally fits well with their account.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, I'm going to share my screen for a second, just because this is relevant to the conversation, and a little bit of a teaser, too, for some hot content coming to the YouTube channel for the rest of everybody else. So let me pull this up for a second. And Dustin, I'm glad this came up, because earlier today, getting ready for this episode, I was saying, remind me to ask you about this. And it just so happened that thinking about this sheet just reminded me to ask you. So
perfect.
Talking about the percentage of spend. So by the way, we are for everyone, all of our audience, we are going to be doing a whole, I spent like a very long lesson showing you guys how to make this, how to use this for yourselves. And so that is coming. It's just a little teaser, but talking about hour of the day. And this is where I see people making these mistakes where usually people would identify like right here for these 2 hours, the around 4 p.m., 5 p.m., maybe even going into like closer to 8 p.m., they see a lot of sales volume. But a lot of time the sales volume is tied to the total spend volume. And why is the spend volume there higher? It could just be because other competitors are like their campaigns are running out of budget. And so our lower CP, like maybe we weren't bidding as aggressively, so now we're getting to win. So our spend is actually picking up, and that's why the sales volume is actually higher in the evenings. And you actually see spend is continuing to increase throughout the day, likely because, just because other competition's going out of budget. But we're actually missing the opportunity where the conversion rate and the revenue per click is much higher. We're not getting as large of a percentage of spend here. And I've got another example. I will put a screenshot up there of another account that has been optimized. So at this point, you should be seeing a screenshot of where we effectively moved the spend to earlier in the day, even though like the sales wasn't as high. It was because we weren't pushing as hard. But now that the sales are much higher there, we're doing a lot better. So my question to you, when you are looking at this, I'm not sure if you guys do something similar in terms of optimizations, but the things that I'm looking for, and I've actually got two questions. This first question is, I started talking about this. I started looking at this thing. It's called a coefficient of variation. It's the standard deviation divided by the average to give you an idea of how big the volatility is. And when you're seeing like that the conversion rate, the volatility, or even like the ACOS is really bad. The ACOS volatility is like 50% throughout the day. Conversion rate is 30%, as opposed to some other brands that's a little bit more even, just doesn't have as big swings and stuff. But is this the type of stuff that you're looking at? Like, for example, you were just saying around like midnight, 1 a.m., if there's just not a lot of spend, it's not super important to try to like optimize that ACOS. But I'm just curious, like how close is this to like what you do, what you recommend? And then I'm going to go into my second question.
Yeah, no, this is neat. I like the, so you're using the coefficient of variation to basically say like, how much potential does this have?
Exactly,
how much of an impact would day parting have on this? If you see huge swings throughout the day, then those curves to the right are going to be a lot steeper.
Exactly.
So that's neat. That's a really cool way to look at it. I mean, yeah, I would look at it a similar way. I wouldn't necessarily just look at the total sales volume, but the actual performance. I have found that in the earlier mornings, when everyone resets and they show up, the CPCs are just so high that they end up driving the performance down.
Exactly. And when you said that, actually, that was when I pulled this up to see if that was the case. And it is indeed. I didn't even realize this, but yeah, my CPCs are probably spiking quite a bit around 2 a.m. because of that whole reset, as you described. And this might be a period that we don't really want to start pushing until you can see like the revenue really starts coming in around 8 a.m. And this is 4 weeks of data. This is 4 weeks of day party data. So it's, decent data confidence, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm going to switch tracks unless if you wanted to add anything.
No, go for it.
Okay. So this is the question that I messaged you on LinkedIn about. Now looking at day of week performance, this doesn't show it super well, but you can see that we're getting the worst conversion rates on Saturday and Sundays. And over here, we actually have some further breakouts where here we're just breaking out weekends versus weekdays. And actually, why does this not look as drastic as I remember it?
Yeah, I was
It
gonna say. I
doesn't-
mean,
it doesn't-
I've seen accounts that are way more drastic than this on weekends to
Yeah.
weekdays. So
Yeah, I guess actually, so yeah, again, looking at the coefficient of variation here, pretty low, only 5% volatility. So not that bad. I guess here is my question though.
Sure.
The percent of spend that we get on the weekends is massive. That's probably more where it is. We get a lot bigger spend, a lot more traffic, but we don't typically see those sales come through until like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Now, because I don't have access to AMC for this account, I can't see these like consideration periods. I believe that's something that AMC can help with. But if I don't have that, my question is, how do I interpret this data when we have like, slightly worse ACOS going through like from Wednesday onwards through the weekend, but traffic seems to pick up and then the sales come through a few days later? Do you think that I should be downbidding the weekends? I guess like how do I think through this is my question.
assuming that your coefficient of variation was bad, whatever that would be, let's just say it was bad, then yeah, I mean, looking at this, I think it's worth at least experimenting with some downbidding on the weekends.
Yeah.
And the reason that I don't think it's a sales attribution issue, like the sales are coming in, Monday and Tuesday look like the two highest ones. Well, actually Saturday is the highest, but so the sales are attributed
That's
to
true,
the time of the click, the window of the click. And that's stated right in the Amazon stream documentation. So what that means is if you're seeing a lot of spend coming in on the weekends, say that somebody makes the click at 8 a.m. on Saturday, but they don't actually make the purchase till Wednesday at 8 p.m., those sales are attributed back to Saturday. And that's very important. That's what makes marketing stream data actionable, because you don't want a day part during the time somebody purchases. You want a day part your ad, which is the time when someone clicks. So that tells me that people here, it's not being attributed back to those clicks. So that tells me that those sales taking place later in the week aren't from the clicks that took place on the weekend. Otherwise, the sales would come in on the weekend.
Okay, so you rightly pointed out that Sunday is the largest sales day here, which I didn't actually realize until just now, that this is actually making sense, because in Vendor Central, this is a vendor account, Sundays are not the largest sales days. It's Tuesdays are like the largest sales days. Sundays are like the glance views days. And so, yeah, thanks for that observation. The fact that the sales are larger here on Sundays does indicate probably that retroly applying the attribution, which is good, because also this data is not from Marketing Stream. This is just from the hourly reports available in Seller Central. So I wasn't sure if it was going to be how similar their attribution systems would be compared to Marketing Stream, but looks like it's pretty similar.
Yeah, that sounds like exactly when I'm describing what you're seeing. Because if you're seeing that the sales are coming in on Tuesday, as far as like the business report, the VC business report, but it's actually being attributed back to the time of the click on the weekend.
Yeah, because the only other scenario that could happen here is, let's just say potentially, I was seeing more sales on Tuesdays and Wednesdays as well. What's really difficult, because it's last touch attribution, who knows if they did all this research over the weekend and then ended up doing another search to go back to the product. They're like, yeah, I'm going to get that product. And their way of navigating back to their product was they first just searched, and then they found it and they click you again, and then you could be getting more sales. And Andrew, the account that we were working on, because this brand here is larger AOV, they sell for 100 to 200. Andrew and I were working with another brand that was selling products in the thousands of dollars that had very long consideration windows, sometimes outside of that 14-day attribution. And so it looks like certain keywords and certain search terms have super high conversion rates, but we didn't know, like, is this the first touch or is this the last touch after 5 touches? And unfortunately, without AMC, I think that's really difficult to solve. But not sure how much of that you guys, when considering, conversion rates, also last touch attribution, like how, if there's a way to, like, I don't know, harmonize all of that together.
I mean, I would just start with the 30-day attribution sales column in Marketing Stream and see how much of a difference that makes to the 7. or the 14. If you see it jumping up considerably, this is definitely going to be a longer consideration product, especially at that price point.
Mm-hmm.
For a brand whose consideration window is like 6 months, is AMC like a viable tool to be able to map that customer journey?
I've never done that far of a customer journey, but you can pull back 13 and a half, I believe, or 12 and a half months. That's the max look back.
Awesome. That's good to know.
Yeah. Well, great, Dustin. We super appreciate you coming on and getting to talk with us and get super in depth and technical on all these things Amazon. We always have everyone for wrapping up. Just let us know what's the best place for people to get in touch with you if they want to reach out, ask more questions. Where do they go?
LinkedIn. If you DM me, I respond usually within an hour or two, and no question, it's too small. I love helping people out, so feel free to reach out.
Yes, I will say Dustin is extremely responsive on LinkedIn, super helpful. I've been bugging him with all kinds of nonsense questions about everything, and truly an expert, especially when it comes to the Amazon APIs. Very helpful there. So really do thank you, Dustin, for all your help there. And then final question before we get you out of here, but we ask this to all of our guests. What's the one lesson that took you way too long to learn, but you wish you would have learned a lot sooner?
Ooh, delegating, 100%.
1,000%.
Yeah. Got to learn to delegate. Yeah. You can't do it all on your own.
How long did it take you to learn that one?
Way too long. Years, several years at least.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think Andrew and I are currently working on that. So,
yeah, trying to get through.
Maybe I'll bug you with questions now on how to delegate better.
Well, when you learn it, I'll be bugging you because I still haven't figured it out. So,
awesome. All right. Well, Dustin, thank you so much for sharing this enlightening episode with us. Everybody else, come back next week for another episode of That Amazon Ads Podcast. See you then.